All right, so I have with me today Mr. Nick Cups. We talked to Nick about a year ago when he acquired the company Shopsmith, and I'm really curious to catch up. So welcome for coming. Welcome for coming. Thank you for coming back, and welcome, Nick. How's it going?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Things are going great. It's quite a journey and we're learning a lot, but yeah, I could say that we're in a demonstrably better position today than we were a year ago. In fact, I'd like to go back and rewatch that interview that we did initially because I probably come across as like a deer in headlights a little bit. I mean, when we did that interview, um, when was that? Was it October of last
It's
year?
a good it's a good question. Well, it would have been
Yeah,
after we had the get together there in Dayton, whatever that weekend was. That
it
was
would have
October.
that was early October, so it would have been a week or two after that. So yeah, so it was about I just want like I was about a month in, maybe 6 weeks in, post acquisition, and it's just getting flooded with uh-ohs and oh no's and all those things, and so you're just like, what did I buy here? So
Yeah, well,
but
that's an interesting question. If only we had a tool for looking back. It looks like we uploaded the video on October 14th.
okay,
So
yeah,
yeah, it has been a little over a year.
yeah, that's
Um,
great.
yeah, so in that time, I was thinking about some things that we have spoken about on the phone and maybe even through Zoom, but that we haven't shared with the viewers of this channel. And I realized, wow, they've not heard on this channel about your experience at Workbench Con, and
Oh
and
wow.
and yeah, exactly. So if we can go back,
Yeah.
you since we last spoke, you were on Shop Nation, the YouTube channel that they took a tour of your
Yep.
facility and gave some feedback and some observations. I didn't agree 100% with some of his conclusions, but it was exposing a new audience perhaps to the world of Shopsmith. And then you did Workbench Con, or maybe the
Mhm.
the timing on that's the opposite. So
Yeah,
since we've
yeah.
last been together, tell me a little bit about what's happened and what your impressions have been.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with Workbench Con because that was February of this year. So it's kind of the first thing. And that was well, I'll back up before that. So my initial thought when I acquired the company was we're not going to go back to the retail store model. Like it's too expensive. There's no tool manufacturer that does that. There is a retail. I just meant like a dedicated Shopsmith stores. So
Yes,
there's Woodcraft and Rockler and all those that we could have a presence in, and we are exploring that. So I can kind of update you on that as we have this
great.
conversation. But my goal was to like reach out to the social media influencer community. And that was really more of a, well, that's where stuff is sold type mentality. I had no idea what that world was like for the creative woodworker DIY crowd.
Yeah.
And in my kind of foray into that, a neighbor of mine, that lives just down the road is friends with a guy who lives in Wyoming, and he's got a pretty decent following. He does woodworking, so I reached out to him, and he actually uses a mark in his stuff. So um, so he said, you should go to Workbench Con. And then my first question was like, I have no idea what that is. So as you can tell, it's like, I'm not a lifelong woodworker kind of guy. So it's been really fun to learn this community. But
Yeah.
I also had no idea who John Malecki was before I bought the company too. Um, so we signed up. We got a booth at Workbench Con. Took the team down there. Took Jim and Elizabeth and Alex and Danielle. They run our marketing, and I mean, what an experience! Like that. That was, I think, one of the just seminal moments for me is my foray into this community, because I've been to countless trade shows. I mean, I grew up in the financial industry, so trade shows in the financial industry are quite a bit different. There's nothing you can really put your hands on. It's all cerebral,
Hmm.
and full of, I'll just say jerks. I wanted to say a different word, but we'll keep it clean. So it was weird to me the first day, how nice and open and engaged and just interested everybody was.
Hmm.
We were the one of the only tool manufacturers there. Everyone else was like stains and waxes and all the stuff that you use, tapes and whatnot, in
Hmm.
doing project work. But like, I was expecting to see, a Grizzly booth and all those, and they're just not there, which was perfect for us because we
Yeah.
were like the only booth. We had two Mark Sevens there. They were all hooked to the same dust collector. Um, and the dust collector was really the talk of the town, because across behind us in the next aisle was Oneida, and they had their dust collection systems running, not as much as we had ours, but the whole place could hear when they turned those on. And when they weren't on, when we had ours on, nobody could hear the DC 6000. Like, it was all of the influencers came up to us and said, like, your dust collector would be a game changer for us in making content and not having to voice over
Hmm.
because it's so loud. We can just talk over it. And so, we're working with a couple people just from a dust collection standpoint, where it's like they might be CNC guys,
Right.
but they've got a DC 6000 in the background. It's kind of neat. Anyway, so the, the fun part was John Malecki was there. And you go through all of those stages of like, I was offended by his comments. I was bothered by the fact that it was so popular, and I wanted to at first just punch the guy in the face. Um, but then I was like, you know what? Like, I see some opportunity here. Like you specifically were the reason that I think that story died, was the effort that
Hmm.
you made by going there and saying, "Hey, man, you gotta give us a fair shake." Uh, However, he was very intentional about avoiding any kind of conversation with me. I
Yeah.
mean, he hung out, he hovered by our booth a lot, and he would have his minions pop in every now and then. But I really tried to, like, I wanted to get him to just walk by us, and I was going to interrupt and introduce myself. Never got the chance. I think he was very, very
Yeah.
strategic about not doing that. So, uh,
Drew Witt published on Instagram the funniest little reel
oh
where he
yeah, it was
shows
great.
John standing outside the booth, and there's the Shopsmith booth.
Yeah.
There's John.
And the caption was, "If you know, you know."
Yeah.
Didn't realize it was that. Yeah, yeah. Just on TV, it's on. Here, twice. Just a hand, monster.
So no, it was great. But from that, I met, the intent of going there was to meet influencers who we could work with in the future.
Mhm.
And so I was new to all that crowd, and really kind of how to structure contracts with people, and how to help, like, how do we integrate Shopsmith into this community that, I mean, most of them had never heard of Shopsmith, and the ones that had
Mhm.
all had the same story. They're like, "Oh yeah, my grandfather had one of those one time," or like, "I inherited one when he died, and it's been sitting in my garage." Like, the same old story.
Mhm.
So it was just neat to show people this kind of ancient tool that's still relevant today, which was really
Yeah.
cool because it's like, it's got some of the bells and whistles of modern technology, but it still looks the same as like it did 40 years ago, roughly. And so to see that in action, and to see kind of the younger crowd really kind of resonate with it, and we helped, like, there were a couple people who were doing projects but forgot, their fence, or they forgot whatever to finish their project at the conference. We just said, "Yeah, you can use our tool. Come over, use the table saw, use the sander. Like, do you need to finish? They're build birdhouses and all kinds of stuff, and we have at it." So the feedback I thought was really, really good, and we've got a few long-term relationships out of it, that we're going to
Good.
continue to enhance. Um, and I haven't been as proactive about that yet. We're trying to tiptoe our way into it only because, the good thing in business is if you double your sales, that's a good thing, but it would cause our supply chain to we'd be down, like we'd have a 6-month wait if we got 2x the orders of marks. We're just not there yet. And so we've been working quietly, developing relationships with a lot of people behind the scenes. A couple of them, you'll see some content relating to Shopsmith, but nothing formal yet.
Good.
But
Yeah.
it's so that was such a great experience for me personally, and kind of engaging in this community that is all new to me. I thought that was a perfect conference.
Now,
And
this from my point of view, just so you know, I'm seeing a lot more Shopsmith on YouTube that are being pulled out from the corner and being used with a bit more pride. Right?
Yep.
You'd see them occasionally; they would get used on these big creators' channels, but now it's like they don't have an excuse anymore, and it's been fun to see.
Yep. That's the goal, is just you get this base awareness out there, and then it sparks curiosity, and then people start pulling out these old machines. They start, it's like, hey, I've always wanted to make a cutting board, and then like they just go, and sky's the limit with the potential with a mark, and everything that you can do with it in this one little tool that is so different in how you approach woodworking than I think the status quo, which is the hurdle of, kind of the getting new sales, is helping people understand that it's actually not that daunting. I mean, when I set mine up for the first time, fortunately, I have the privilege of Jim works for me, so I can ask him to come down and give me a tutorial, which was very helpful. But I felt like I had it in like an hour. Like I was good to go. I was using it. And so it was way less daunting than I thought it would be. Just by how it's viewed. But so after Workbench Con, did you want to talk more about that Workbench Con?
Well, just to cast the vision for folks that have never been there, you come up the escalators or come down the elevators from the hotel. There's a large open area that leads to a couple ballrooms. And then the main ballroom is where most of the speakers are, and a few of the hands-on presentations and displays. But you were right there as folks came up the escalator, right? So they couldn't really miss you. And as you pointed out, there was stuff happening. And
well, we got really lucky with that, because we rented a little booth. And then as Jim was laying it out, because I was like, I want to take 2 marks, he kind of gave me that look of like, dude, we don't have the space for that. Like we rented a little 10 by 10 booth because I had no idea. And so we get there, and the booth next to us was the corner booth. And so I asked I'm a big believer of, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission. So we just took the wall, like after we realized like no one's showing up at this booth, like we took the wall down and just kind of took over this territory. and then we expanded out into the walkway to like make it annoying for people to get around. Like they had to kind of walk through our booth to get around us.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we got super lucky there. I don't expect us to be that lucky this would go around. I'm just gonna have to invest in a corner booth again. But it was neat because we partnered with Gerhard Industries, and they do stamping. So you can buy what are the a
branding iron.
Yeah. So we did this project for everyone. They come by and they make little tea candle holders where they make the base on the mark. Then they go to oh my God, what's the name of the stain company? Hold on. Sutherland Wind, I think. Crap. I'll have to remember it later.
Should I go look at Instagram?
Well, I have a T-shirt of theirs that I could go look at. But anyway,
but they were outside of your booth.
Yeah, so what we do, we have this progressive project. So you'd make the tea light holder in our booth, then you go to Gerhardt and brand it. We had a special brand made for Workbench Con, and then you would take it to the stain company, and and stain it. And so you would walk home with this like self-made, really cool, it could be a coaster, it could be a candle holder, whatever it is. It just was neat to see kind of how people were really, they're excited to make something and to watch that kind of evolution happen and their excitement. And they would always come back to the booth when it was done and show us. And yeah, that was just, I don't know. I'd never been to a trade show where there was that much positivity, which it was off-putting almost. I was like, where's the assholes? They don't exist in that space.
No, you're right about that. But everybody who's there is a creator, but all
Right.
the creators in this community are also fans of the other creators, and so it's a fun get
Yeah, there
together.
isn't a sense of competition. It's almost like the
Yeah,
world is big enough. There isn't a zero-sum game
yeah,
mentality, which is kind of where other industries lie, is like their success means there's less opportunity for me. And we're in this space, it's
yeah.
like, no, 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 no. It's like you can piggyback off success and both grow together. It was really refreshing to see. I was very excited about that part of the show for sure. And this community is awesome.
In the last year, you've taken control of the company. You
Yep.
move in, you start looking at all the facts and things that are in the corner under tarps and things like that. What's the reality of owning this company, and how does it compare to your vision?
I still go back to, and I think I made this analogy on our first interview, and that was I bought a house that sat vacant for 5 years, and we've gone through and opened up walls and identified all the raccoons that shouldn't be living in there, and we identified all the wires that had been chewed through that, when you're trying to rehab a house to get it ready for either rental or selling. That's very much like Shopsmith, but it wasn't so much in your face as it was out in the world in terms of our supply chain, the health and age of all of our dies and casting molds that we use to make parts. I wasn't able to really analyze that on the acquisition piece. And so when we started to push sales and we would make orders for new parts, as I would say, shit would happen. And so stuff would either break or a vendor would go out of business or whatever it is. And the business was always run on such a tight supply chain, kind of like ready now manufacturing. And as we pushed on that a little bit, we started to see where some holes were. And that's when you see delays happen. I mean, we're currently in one right now because of that, and that was really more because we just sold too many marks in the month of October, which is great, good problem to have. But now it's like, okay, this part now is back ordered because of this push, right? And so it's just, there's always that little thing of like pull on too many strings and something's going to break. So it's been a precarious year for me, just in the sense of like, I don't like not knowing where problems are. And I feel like with this business, because it's been neglected for so long from a strategic point of view, that no one knows where those problems are. We just have to experience them as they happen. And so the whole team knows, like, okay, here's most importantly, we need to communicate to customers. When something happens, if you've got an order that's now back ordered, we got to have a communication tree. That just never happened in the past. It was always just like, thanks for your order. Let us know when you get it. And that was kind of the motto. Now it's like, no, 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 no. We gotta. So we're re-examining top to bottom of just A, how we come to the market, B, how we talk to customers, B, C, how are we supporting the legacy network kind of that you represent,
Yeah.
and not forgetting about those guys as we look at the future of this new, soon to be legacy customers kind of thing, as I like to call them.
Yeah.
So it's like that's the part that's kind of giving me the most anxiety. It's just kind of like waiting for that phone call from Jim of like, hey, just want to give you a heads up, this broke today. Kind of thing. Oh, okay, well, what do we do about it? So, but I think I've shifted the motto. So to your reaction right there was perfect, of this sigh of, oh, again, to this is an opportunity for us. Like, a lot of our problems exist because we are making things with 1980s technology. You know, we're using manufacturing practices that fewer and fewer people actually do. So when something breaks, we sometimes don't have an option to replace it. And
Right.
when one of those things is a really big component, you know, we went through this earlier this year with the belt covers, where our manufacturer, the press died, and they weren't going to fix it because we were one of 2 customers that used that press.
Oh
So
no.
we had to scramble and find another press in the area to make this part. And of course, our inventory was low when it happened because we called them and said, okay, we need to make an order. And they're like, well, we can't make it. So
Oh gosh.
so that's happened probably 5 or 6 times this year with just various components. And so it's an opportunity for us to look at, do we need to make it this way? And what's the quick fix? Because we don't want to sit here and have this be a 6-month problem, because that's a bigger issue. But it's also like, does it have to be made this way? Can we make it a different way? Is there a less expensive way to make it? You know, because manufacturing is just completely different now. Like almost no one is doing these deep draw press processes that are basically 5 of our components. So the legs, the motor pan, the belt cover, these are all using these old presses that, you know, there's just a matter of time before they don't exist anymore. So we're using this opportunity now to kind of think through, is there a better way to make it? You know, so it's like fixing a car when you're driving down the freeway a little bit, where it's, you know, it's like you can't pull off the road. But so that's been the biggest, I think, angst for me, is just that not knowing, you know, where the skeletons are. But I'm super proud of our team and just kind of how we've come together and said, okay, how are we going to manage this situation, and then what's the solve? And every time we figured out the solve, which is great.
Good.
Yep.
You said a couple things that popped into mind from our last conversation that drew probably the most comments from my
Okay.
viewers. And I think maybe there was some misunderstanding, because when they hear you say something, they're referencing from their own line of thinking. So,
Yeah.
for example, you know, you talked about reaching out to younger users, and so many of the comments were, you should get these machines into high school shops. Now, when you think of younger user, are you thinking that young necessarily, or
No.
you want users that are younger and have a wallet that can be opened?
Almost. Well, if I look at the average age of our legacy customers, you are on the young end of that.
Oh,
Personally,
nice,
like, just, I mean, but my point is that when I say younger, you know, we're going from so I'm at the end of Gen X. So whatever the generation before Gen X is baby boomers, I believe.
that was me.
Yeah. So we're
Two of
looking at
baby
the
boomers.
very young end of the baby boom generation, you know, through basically your 25 to 55 year olds, really more the 35 to 55 year olds, is kind of like, that's my first foray of people that are mid-career, they have disposable income, but they also have these hobbies that like, either the kids are in their teens and they're starting to become independent, and they're just like, okay, I don't have time to play golf. I want to do something creative. And, you know, I think you're seeing everything I'm reading is saying that woodworking is growing really, really quickly, just as a hobby thing, because the access to it now is so easy, and Shopsmith is in there.
Right.
We're just trying to weasel our way into the front end of that. But so no, I'm not talking like high school students.
Well, and I don't know if you saw, there was an article a few months back that listed and ranked the sexiest hobbies. So from least
Awesome.
sexy, you know, comic book man kind of level
Okay, so
attractiveness,
comic book
and
collecting is least sexy. Good to know.
way up near the top though was woodworking. So that's
Mhm.
probably why we're seeing more interest in this.
Well, it's got it all. You know, it's like you can be, if you're a guy, you can be this manly man who's got, flannel shirts and facial hair and long hair, and you're just kind of duding out. But the female side of it is also incredible, how just robust the influencers I met. I would say that Workbench Con was majority female, which
Yeah.
was just awesome. It was so cool to see, because woodworking, I mean, our customer base is 95% male.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's a complete, of all ages, untapped market on the female side of just how opportunistic we can be as a company.
Hmm.
But that it makes sense for, like, the thing that nobody can compete with us on is space. Like, we solved the space issue. So it doesn't matter where you're from. If you don't have an entire 1 or 2 car garage to house machines, um, then you've got a space issue. That's your limiting factor.
Hmm.
In our studies, it's not price. In fact, we are underpriced relative to what you get compared to the marketplace. So yeah, it's fascinating to me.
Okay, and maybe this is also related, the pushback. You made the comparison. You said you were looking for the customer experience similar to Apple. Now, I know what you mean. I'm currently on a MacBook and I've got my iPhone here and my
Yeah, they're all
iPad's over
integrated.
there. And
Yep.
yeah, to me, I understand what you mean. But again, my audience tending to be a little older, their experience with Apple is it's alien technology. It's not running anything that
Right.
Microsoft makes, which it
Right.
does now, by the way. You
Yep.
know, and that was the whole Apple ecosystem seemed to have been targeting the design community and the arts
No,
community. So, what did you mean by that when you talked about
I,
the customer
I meant
experience?
it. I meant just the integration. Like, once you buy, like, so to Apple, like, once you buy an iPhone, an iPhone, because I went from Apple to then Droid when they got rid of Google Maps, because I use that all the time, and then I came back to Apple. The network that Apple has in terms of the system to make everything connect seamlessly. And, like, once you buy an iPhone, to have a secondary thing, like, I don't have a MacBook, I have a PC as my laptop. And I get it. Like, if I had an iPhone, a MacBook is an extension of my iPhone. I can do everything on both simultaneously. I can do FaceTime
Yep.
calls on a computer. Like, that is what I mean. So Shopsmith's like that, where it's like, once you buy a mark, like, you can do all projects on this one thing. It allows you to do everything in woodworking. Obviously not everything. There's some nuances that you can't do CNC stuff on mark, obviously. But for the most part, like, it's all the machines you need if you have all the attachments and everything. That From there, it is now then integrating in the project life into this hardware network that we've created. The hardware network is just everything's integrated in a small space, where it's like, I see in the future the ability to have a Shopsmith app that takes you through, like, hey, I want to build a chair. How do I do that on a Shopsmith? I want to build this. How do,
Mhm.
like, that's what we will create in the future.
Yeah.
And so once you buy, the idea is once you buy a mark, like, to go outside of a mark, in terms of your machines, is is going to be the oddity, not the norm. Because, like, it's designed as, like, once you're in the family, and, like, we've got all the
Hmm.
solutions for you in this family. Um, the only reason you would is if this hobby became a job and you just needed bigger tools that churn out stuff. Like, I just come back to John Malecki, like, his whole huge entire workshop there with these giant machines, because he's churning out some projects for sure.
Yep.
And that would be very challenging to do on a mark, if not impossible. So that's what I mean by, like, I'm not trying to make the customer experience like Apple. It's more of, our system is very similar to me in how things integrate to the people that are making stuff. where it's like we have this one-stop shop, this thing that you can make anything on it. It doesn't take up a bunch of space, and all that's missing is then the modern stuff that your audience probably is a little nervous about, is the integration into an app, into actually getting our headstock to communicate via Wi-Fi and Bluetooth,
Right.
those kind of things. Like, I see so much potential there, but we just have some base things that we got to figure out. So no, I'm not trying to make it like Apple. It just feels that way to me, of this product and where it fits. Is my whole mission that the organization is, if you can get someone to buy a Mark 7, we have a customer for life. Like, it's
Right.
just, that's how to treat it. And it's because we make it so much easier to stay with us rather than to go buy a bandsaw. Just buy the attachment. It's cheaper. It doesn't take up any space. It sits on a shelf behind you, like the belt sander that I see there. Like, it's just there, and it plugs into the machine. So, that's what I meant.
I appreciate that. Other hobby, I enjoy cooking, and I have quite a number of appliances that are now connected to the internet.
Mhm.
And at first it seems silly. Why would I need a pellet smoker that connects to the internet? And
That
and
I
then I
that I
ex
totally understand. Why
then I
my air fryer
experienced it.
needs to connect to the internet, that I don't
Yeah.
understand.
But when you have oversight on your phone and you're not even in the house and
Yeah,
you can do some things, we're going to
makes
be a little
sense.
bit late. Let me turn the temperature down or do something
Right.
different. Then it does make sense. But just for the sake of having it connect to the internet, that doesn't make sense.
No,
And I think
no.
that's maybe some people's concerns about, why would you overcomplicate this piece of equipment and make me have to take my phone out? Well, you might not understand what that could do for you if
Correct.
that were one of the options.
No.
Almost every piece of software we use, you can go up to file and click on that, and you can choose, or you can right click, or there's many
Yep.
ways to get to the same thing. And if there weren't, that'd drive you nuts.
Right. Right. Yeah, there has to be a level of redundancy for sure. The thing that the needle I'm trying to thread is to add all of that capability without changing how to use the machine.
Hmm.
I don't want it to, like, it was a big step change for a lot of people when we added the touch screen, because now it's just a
Hmm.
totally different menu to navigate. It's a totally different process to use the machine. And there's an education curve there for sure. For new users, there's no education curve other than, I just bought this new thing that I need to learn how to use.
Yeah.
Now, going a step further than that, of doing Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, for example, which, we're not really that close to yet. We're still fixing all of our other downstream things, but we'll get there soon. But to add that capability just means that, I see the comments, I read them, I occasionally troll the forums, just to get a sense of who's out there. I try not to engage too much, but I
Yeah.
read most of it. And a common, there are common threads that pop up of like, hey, if only this were true or whatever. So I see those, and things like a larger stop button, things like, all of those things that come with some of the
Yeah.
downsides of a touchscreen should be easily mitigated by instant connectivity, where we could push out an update to increase the size of, like, for instance, the stop button.
Right.
We just, decisions were made by the previous administration that prevent us from rolling that out without an extremely expensive investment.
Hmm.
And so we are not in a place where we can do that right now, but we're working on it for sure.
Okay, but just based on what you currently have, just last night I connected my speed reducer to my Mark V with the manual speed control. And I stood there for a few moments thinking, now exactly what speed do I need to set this for this diameter of Forstner bit? And I'm using a reducer, so I got to do math, which is not my thing. Where with a Mark 7, you could just say, I'm drilling hardwood. My Forstner bit is this diameter, and it would automatically give me the speed that I want and maintain that speed. That's something I can't do with a mechanic That's while some people might think, well, that's added complexity. No, that would have made my life simpler last night.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
All right. So I'm curious about, as you're thinking about, uh changing the way you all do things, there are some common tools that folks have asked questions about that you guys don't produce today. And there may be lots of reasons, probably the least of which is it would be difficult to be profitable producing them. But have you looked, are there any low-hanging fruit of products that are not currently being produced by you that maybe y'all would bring back in the near future? Not asking for a well,
Well,
I guess I am asking. I like to
I was
have.
gonna say, is there a specific ask here?
Well, maybe when I built that shelf back there, I had a whole bunch of people, surprising number of people asking about the uh, the uh, the SPT stand that would hold multiple individual tools when they're not being used.
Just as
Right?
a
That's
not a power station, just a stand.
just a stand to hold them. It seems like a fairly easy
Hmm.
get because it uses the same legs that your current SPT stand uses. It uses the
Hmm.
same mounting bases. It would be a matter of getting a top section made, and maybe it's stamped by the same people that made your belt covers. I don't know.
Well, yeah. So the short answer is we have not we've not thought about a multiple. It's like we have the individual one, but the multiple
Yeah,
one, it the way that could work, um, as I think about initially, the thing that makes the most sense would be to have, widen the base, put a piece of wood on top of it that then you attach all of the holder. Again, I'm pretty terrible with the part names.
it's okay.
The whatever that part is that you
It's
stand.
a mounting base, you call that.
Thank you, mounting base.
Yeah,
I had it. So yeah, if we were just to have, because like I kind of have that in my shop of like it looks just like yours. Like you have this shelf
yeah.
behind you, and the mounting bases are staggered to add all of the things. Um,
Yeah, I mean
here's
that top piece could be a plastic laminated
it
edge
could be.
banded piece
Here's
of
the issue.
melamine.
The issue with that is, if we were able to do it where we didn't have to manufacture a new part,
Mhm.
um, out of metal, because that is a very expensive investment. And
Yeah,
if it were a unique part to this thing, I'd need to see a lot of demand for that to justify it.
yeah,
When questions are asked, it's like if I see the same question asked 10 times, then I know it's something that we need to address. If it's asked once or twice, I'm like, these are just more of a lot of times they're more of just personal, like, boy, it'd be nice if this were true, but
yeah.
almost no one else feels that way kind of thing. But that's a really good suggestion. Uh, I guess my question would be is what do people do now?
Well, that's just it. So many
They
comments
just
from
do what you
people
do behind
that
us?
talked about things are just leaning against the corner and
Okay.
sitting on the floor, and that joiner gets heavier every year that you age.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. No, it's a good like I will speak with Jim about, let's think about some creative options here. The problem that I think you're going to have is price.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to be an inexpensive item.
right.
Buying, what I would urge people to do is just buy a bunch of mounting bases and make your own.
Yeah,
Like just do like what you did right behind you on that shelf, like just make that. It's
yeah,
like that would be, or you don't even need to buy mounting bases. I'd love for you to buy the mounting bases for me for sure. But the width and the diameter of those holes. So
right, right.
it's you got a drill press. It's right behind you. So
Yep. Oh,
um
there is a drill there.
right. So I just would say uh the challenging thing is we don't really know how big the legacy market is. And when you roll out new products, you kind of we are taking the approach of anything new has to be vetted for like the new audience as the primary purchaser first, before we're going to invest in, something that's redundant backwards.
Right.
However, that one is an interesting ask because it doesn't seem like it's hard to make something. So yeah, like I said, let me talk to Jim and see what's possible out there. I would just say to your listeners, like, if this is something that you really think people would buy, let us know. It's post comments on this video, email us at info at Shopsmith, all the things, comment on our Facebook pages and stuff. We'll see that. It's just if 3 or 4 guys are saying, boy, it'd be nice if I had one of these things. I don't know if I want to make an investment to sell.
Yeah. No, you're right. I guess the challenge is, and this reminds me, back in the 1990s, Shopsmith did an experiment where they introduced something called a Mark I, and it was a very short Mark V with very interesting, simple castings on the end. And to use it, you had to build a base, but the instructions told you, don't build it with the Mark I. It's not ready to be used at that height. So I think a lot of new owners are in the situation where, okay, I need a stand because I have this brand new bandsaw, this brand new joiner, and all these things that are, currently sitting in boxes, or maybe I've unboxed them and I don't know where to put them.
Yep.
And yes, I should be able to build a stand for it. You're right, but I'm not 2 years into my woodworking career.
Right.
So some of those things that just look, this will get you off to a good start. You'll be able to organize those tools. And maybe again, it takes a whole new configuration than what we've done in the past. Maybe there's a solution too.
No,
Jim's the man.
I definitely think it's important, and it would meet both sniff tests for sure. Absolutely. But you brought up something that's interesting that I've been thinking about lately. Because I've talked with lots of people from your community, from just lifelong users. And the switch from the Mark V to the Mark VII, was essentially, if you just forget about the touchscreen part, because you had the keypad originally, and then you have the touchscreen now. But basically, the functional enhancements we made from those two are just adding the router and the shaper, right? Like the Mark VII goes to 10,000 RPMs, where the 5 or the 520 or whatever whatever the iteration was, doesn't go that fast. So as I'm looking forward, what I'd really love to hear from people is, for those that have a Mark VII, how often are you using the router and the shaper? It's like, if we wanted to think about simplification, because a router and a shaper, like, as I look, the planer is a good example of, we're probably not going to make a planer again, only because it's just not competitive in the market space. Like, you can buy, they're not great, the ones you buy for $500 or $600, but it cost me $1,600 to make the planer.
Yeah.
So it's like, I can't, A, I'm never going to make money on it. And B, it's like, I'm going to sell like 6 of them. So like that kind of stuff doesn't make sense. But as I'm looking at, like, if we went kind of backwards in terms of thinking of, if we simplified, because there's a lot of complexity that the new headstock has underneath it to spin it up that fast. So if you simplified it and had an offering of kind of a more of like a conventional headstock type thing, where it's 5 functions instead of 7, I've been thinking a lot about that, because my dad bought a Mark this year, and and so I've been kind of living vicariously through him, of like, okay, you're this unbiased user who's kind of exploring woodworking for the first time seriously, where it's like, I'm expecting to get maybe a bunch of bowls for Christmas that he made, which would be so awesome. But just asking him questions, asking community questions, like, which tools do you use the most, which don't you? So I'm just trying to think of, can we simplify this to make it, is there an entry level, not necessarily the Mark I idea, but
No, it was a bad
it's,
idea.
it was,
I
but it
think,
was like, is there an entry level? Like,
yeah.
I think the Folkers tried to do that with the shorty. Like they were trying to tier it up of the shorty, the 5 and the 7.
Yeah.
And to me, it never made sense, like the way that it was done. And so, but I think the idea is right to think about of, do we offer a lower price point entry point that doesn't do as much,
Mhm.
or does that just confuse the whole system? So I'm playing around in my head. I'm not making an announcement today of like
I
what we're
think,
doing, but I just would love to hear people's feedback on,
yeah. And
how is the router and the shaper and all that.
I'll weigh in, and then maybe I'll even edit this out because I have a really strong opinion in why I prefer a Mark V, and
Hmm.
it's not because of the headstock. I don't care for the double tilt, and the main reason I don't like the double tilt is I have to take my jointer or whatever accessory off of the machine to go to the drill press position. So
Um,
I like to leave the jointer on the machine, and then the drill press just raises up right past it, right? So you've got simpler end castings, put
yeah,
a mechanical headstock on it, and there's your entry level. Then if somebody desires the higher RPM and the under the table routing, then they go with the
yeah.
double tilt and the Power Pro headstock.
I didn't think of that. The double tilt is yeah. Okay, that makes a lot of sense because like that's your SPT stand too, like that extra leg of just having
It
it on
kind
all
of
the time, right? So
kind of is.
yeah, I didn't consider that.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting point of view. I like that. Okay. Well, so it's
Yeah.
stuff like that that I love to play around with in my head of like, we have this really good product that we make and we sell, and there's a clear market for it. And then are there sub markets within that we're missing by having just this one thing? So I'm kind of looking around at that. None of that makes any difference right now. I'm just ideating for, years
Yeah.
2, 3, 4 in the future of how can we do, what are called line extensions on our product offerings to capture more market share, offer more, just open up our network to more people.
Sure.
That's the end goal. But I just was curious on how you thought of it. But the double tilt thing it's really, yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. I'm curious about 3-year, 5-year visions, and what you think is going to change with the way you go to market. And I'm curious about things. And thank you for the free freight that you incorporated into your website. That was super helpful when I needed the new dust chute for this planer. Um, but things like I get every week, my wife and I joke about it now. One or the other of us will get a text message and we'll go, "Hey, Harbor Freight's having a sale." Right? Because
Yeah.
they're Johnny on the spot with their sales. Now we also know they mark it up and have a sale, right? They've
Yeah.
got tremendous margins over
Yep.
there. But I'm just curious, what you're and they have that Insider Track Club, which is very much like Prime, where I pay an annual fee, and
Right.
then with that gives me benefits as something of a super user. I'm curious about what things like that you've explored, and again, maybe a 3-year vision for the company.
A subscription model is certainly something I'm thinking about, whether it's like a way to continue to engage what I'll call our legacy audience of what, the questions that we are considered or trying to answer in a meaningful way are, why would someone subscribe to that? What would they need to get in
Yeah,
exchange for that subscription, where it feels like it's worth it? And the biggest one is access to content. I think, whether it's tips and tricks or project ideas or whatever is the number one. And so we're building that out right now. Now that we have an actual shop, a studio, the museum, like all of that's front and center as you walk in. We're now in a place where we can film content, we can start creating stuff in-house,
yeah,
which will just be immensely helpful. Like all the little tips of the table leveling button that you push, and like those little hidden things that unless you read the manuals cover to cover, you're gonna miss. So like
Right.
there should be shorts out there on all of that stuff.
Yes.
And so we're building all that out right now. It's like every time I like think of something, I call the team like, okay, video this. It's like we gotta have it. A, for training purposes for our team, but B, just like this is just interesting stuff that I think a lot of
Yeah.
people that unbox the new mark would be like, holy shit, I didn't know I could do that.
And
Um,
you can do that today. It doesn't take a ton of technology to
Correct.
make
Yeah,
that
and it
happen.
doesn't even have to be that high quality. Like
No.
the most viewed videos in the world are done on an iPhone. So it's like
Yep.
you don't need this huge production suite to do that. So yeah, we're learning that. We're starting to incorporate that. It's really more of the who gets to do it rather than the when and the why. So
Yeah.
um so yeah, that's certainly part of it for sure.
Anything else? 3 years out?
Well, so back to high schools, we have sold a few marks into high schools. There is a resurgence as the tech and the trades come back to popularity. I think we're seeing that shift happen in the country. Um, our value proposition is the same for high schools it is for individuals. It's like you
Yeah.
don't need to go build a shop. Like you can use your home ec room to do shop class for a month or whatever it is. Like you buy a
Yeah.
couple marks, you put them in a closet, you wheel them out when you do your wood shopping. If that's the only way you can budget that in, your investment's very small relative to building out an entire shop class.
Right.
And so we've had a couple schools who've purchased 2, 3 marks at a time from us. Um, so that's pretty cool. I 3, 4 years out is more of, to me, those are scale years where we've 5 to 10x our number of mark sales at that time, and we're starting to make innovation changes. So whether it's like the next iteration of whatever that is, could be the headstock, could be the mark, could be like whatever we're innovating, coming out with new is going to be important, because what we have is fine today. There's a lot of ways to make it better and more
Yeah.
appealing. And so, yeah, I think to me, it's like once we've hit a certain number of mark sales that I've kind of laid out as like, here's our goal for years 2, 3, and 4 as a company. And it's based on just new mark sales, because like the parts component, our ability to service the existing community, that's the majority of our business today. But eventually we want new product sales to eclipse that. And so once that shift happens, I think we'll have the resources to be really, really innovative with a lot of things. So I put that out as a 2 to 3 year window before we're starting to make some of those cool decisions.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
Well,
just getting a little slower.
let's look back one last time, and then we'll need to wrap this up because I got to go to work.
Yeah.
What what do you know now that you didn't know then a year ago? What's like the biggest learning that you had in the last year?
That's a really good question. I don't think I've thought about that because there's been so many I don't want to call them small, but just there's so many times every week where there's an issue that we've got to work on
Yeah.
that have come up. To me, it's this is not an easy of a community to sell into as I thought it would be.
Hmm.
So there's that. Uh, but I think that on the flip side of that, we're doing our kind of year in review right now internally. And, every metric that we measure ourselves against, we're beating this year over last.
Good.
In fact, October. So our strong months are mid-November through April is like our heavy. That's when people are buying stuff from us. That's when they're starting to think about projects and the tools they need to do those projects. And that's kind of industry wide of like November to April is the 6 months of sales for woodworking tools in general. Our best month since I've acquired it was October,
Mm.
which is awesome. Like it was totally unexpected. We know why, but at the same time, we did more sales in October than we did in, January and February and March of last year, which are the 3 heaviest months. And so that was really, really cool to see. And so it's, all of the delays that we're experiencing now are because demand is higher than we anticipated it. And so it's sending us into delays because our supply chain, there are a few parts where lead times on parts are months, not weeks. And so when we sell, 50 headstocks in a couple weeks, it's like, oh crap. I mean, thank you, that's awesome, but oh crap, like we gotta make all these orders like right now because so yeah, I think that to me it's the give and the take, the pull and the push of a woodworking manufacturing plant and not having anyone to talk to. Like there's no real competitors out there that do it like we do it. Everyone else receives a finished product from China that they then resell.
Right.
Where we're receiving parts that we're now manufacturing a machine in the US. And we're doing it all by hand. As people that have toured our factory know, there's zero automation with how Shopsmith is made. And I don't intend on changing that anytime soon. If we're selling 10,000 marks a year, we might have an automated line, put some stuff together. But we're pretty far away from that. So it's more of like, it's learning that nuance of it. And that learning can only happen by doing and by waking up every day with the anxiety of what's going to break today. And then now that's really kind of more of a motivator to me of okay, what's going to break today and what do we get to fix today to make us better in the future. So that's been kind of the fun learning for me, of just the nuance of this specific business, buying the brand that I bought, and how a small subset of the US population has this visceral connection to, and how if more people heard about it would also have a visceral connection to it as well. And so that has just been fun. The community's awesome. Everyone I talk to is super helpful and awesome. There's some people that are, as I call them, old curmudgeons. You're never going to please them. But everyone's a customer and everyone deserves to have a good experience. And so that's what we're trying to do.
Why was October so good, Nick? You said, why?
Well, we ran some pretty good promotions. And so that's still leading the pack on what funnels kind of the bumps in sales. You have this baseline, this infrastructure of customers that are constantly using stuff and needing to buy new things. And so you have this baseline of sales that you can count on every month. And then you have these spikes, depending on what other promotions we're running or efforts we've been making. And so, I think we ran a headstock promotion in October that was great. We also, like, with the launch of the new website, and the content that's on it that's so different than what we're experiencing, that the goal of the new website is to make someone who stumbles across Shopsmith that knows nothing about it gets it. Like they understand what we're doing. Where the previous website, it was too confusing. Like if you didn't have a base knowledge of Shopsmith, you didn't really know what it was. And it took too long to teach you. Where now I think it's a lot more of the typical e-commerce platform, a lot of motion, a lot of video, a lot of stuff that it's very clear on what we make, where it goes, how to use it. It's a lot clearer, I should say, not very clear, but we're getting there. So that integration, we're starting to see a huge uptick in our website traffic. Part of the reason that I eliminated shipping charges was it was the wrong thing to do. and B, we had so many people who just abandoned their carts. Like they would go and they build out a cart, and then they go to check out, and then they would just not check out. And so I'm like, well, yeah, if you buy a $40 part and are paying $30 in shipping, I wouldn't buy that part either. I'd go try to find it somewhere else. So it's like, so once we did that, we just saw an uptick in everything. And so we're learning through that.
Good. Good. Well, we're all in your corner. We're all cheering for you, and we are wishing, hoping, and praying for great things for you. So, Nick, thanks for catching us up. It was good talking to you. And since you're trolling the comments, I look forward to seeing what folks have to say to you down there. Feel free to comment back. You're more than welcome to.
I try to stay away from it, especially when it gets, into some messy areas, but
come on. On from a creator side, that's all interaction. I love the thumbs down as much as the thumbs up. So
if only we had a dislike button for sure. Yeah.
yeah, I miss those days. All right, thanks, Nick. I appreciate your time.
Thank you,
and
Scott.
make it a great day.